Okay, marketers love sessions. I come across this in a lot of workshops that I do, where I work with marketers and also with product people, and we're trying to bring together both disciplines. And product people think in users, marketing people think in sessions. This becomes problematic when we try to bring both groups onto one platform. So I did plenty of migrations from Google Analytics 4 to Amplitude, and this is the most common question that really comes up. How does the session work in Amplitude? And my answer to this is usually, why do you need sessions? Users are much better, but obviously this is a much too simple answer. So in this video, I want to give you the whole background about sessions. What makes sessions different from users? Actually, what is a session at all? How do we define it? How do we work with it? And which kind of shape do we actually need it? You can see this as the full reference on sessions. So you might just need to watch this one video to really understand how to work with sessions and also like why sessions are not really easy to work with. So with that said, let's dive into the topic. I have to start with a confession. Yesterday, I tried to record this video 4 times because I thought it's so straightforward. I don't really have to prepare anything and I can just go on the whiteboard and just sketch it out. So turns out, so here you see the results from yesterday. Turns out it's not the case. It's not that easy to explain when you should work with sessions or when you should work with users. It's easy to explain what a session is. It's easy to explain what a user is. But if you want to go beyond, and I definitely want to go beyond, it's not that easy. And it really gave me a headache yesterday. So I sat down in the evening to think about how do I have to actually explain, where do I actually have to start? Because the starting point was always wrong when I did it yesterday. So today I have a different version. And so let's see if it makes it to the end. Okay, follow me along. Let me delete everything here because this is useful, but not really. Okay, let's zoom in. Sessions versus users. And the big question that is hanging over it, when should you work with sessions, when should you work with users? Or should you just work with users and never work with sessions again? So I'm trying to answer this, but the most important concept that we have to introduce first, and I make it green because it's definitely a green one, is we have to talk about success. This sounds a little bit ridiculous, but I hope it totally makes sense when you keep watching this for at least 5 more minutes. Analyzing success is, I would say, a regular task in analytics. So a lot of stuff that we do in analytics, we want to understand what makes things successful. So what makes our website successful? What makes our application successful? And success also plays an important role to really understand when you work with sessions and when you work with users. Because working with them gives you a different view on sessions and on users. Under the glooming eye of success, when we look into sessions now, the question we are asking here is, when is a session successful? And this already is not an easy question to answer. So let's pick a simple example. Let's say we have an online shop. Let's assume a session is someone comes on our website and she or he looks around and at some point they go into the checkout and they buy something. So by that we would say our session was successful. It's basically the same as someone goes into a regular shop and then they leave with buying something. It can happen that someone leaves the shop without buying something. Then we would say, hey, yeah, I guess the session was not really successful. But we want to get an understanding how many successful sessions we have. And so this is like, in the end, where we then construct something where we say we track conversions, which, let's say in our examples, are purchases, and we look into a conversion rate. And so obviously we calculate this by taking all the purchases divided by all sessions, and then we have a conversion rate. And so then we have a session conversion rate. So the session conversion rate tells us something about this single item, like someone comes to our website and, okay, were these people, when they come to the website, actually successful? And so this is what our conversion rate for session tells us. So you can already see It has some use. So it can definitely be useful, but I will explain you in a second what makes it so complicated, what makes it so tricky. But let's move over to the users quickly, because this is the other area that we can look into. So we have users, and in our example with the e-commerce case, let's call them not users, let's call them customers, because I think this makes it a little bit more interesting. So again, when is a customer successful? Also not easy to answer. The first time they are successful, at least like they purchase one item. Okay, this sounds like a good success story, but obviously when we are an online store, we want them to buy, I don't know, 100 items? At least like we want to have them coming back regularly whenever they need something, whatever we are selling. Obviously, we want to develop them over time to very loyal customers. We have different ways of conversion events. So if we take the first one, let's say we have a conversion for first purchase, then obviously we can calculate a conversion rate. This scenario with the first purchase tells us something. We can calculate a conversion rate for new customers. Then it would be like a conversion rate, new customers, which is definitely super interesting because this is a driving force in our business setup that tells us how good are we in acquiring new customers. And so we need new customers because we will lose some customers over time. So some customers buy for the first time and then they never come back for whatever reasons. Maybe they just simply forgot about us because like our experience was not so significant in their life that they wake up and say, oh my God, I have to order there again. We might have this, but we also might have, let's call them returning purchase. These are then returning customers. This would also like then introduce a conversion rate for returning customers. In the end, we calculate two conversion rates. First, we calculate how someone lands on our website and becomes a new customer. Now they're in our books as new customers. Now we can see from these 1,000 new customers that we collected over the last, I don't know, last 6 months, how many of them can we convert into returning customers? As you can see, we are talking about conversion rates. It's the same kind of metric, but we are looking from different kind of angles on that. When we analyze this, like the returning customers, we can calculate two conversion rates for them. We sent a campaign out with a discount code to all new customers that bought something in the last 2 months. Now we send out an email. And so someone clicks on the link, comes to the website. Obviously, they start a new session. Then we can see if this session for this returning customer was successful. This gives us one glance. In the whole sea of all the different kind of sessions, we can identify them who are coming from this email. And then we can see, okay, was this email triggering buying sessions and were they successful? We can analyze this, but we can also, beyond that, we can analyze, okay, how successful are we in converting new customers into returning customers? So the perspective is what makes a difference. The session perspective is it's a shorter period in time that we look into, and to see if this was successful. Users, obviously, we look into user lifetime. So this is why I had this here, new returning customers. We can go crazy with this and we can extend this. We could also like conversion rate now into, I don't know, VIP purchases, which are VIP customers, which means it's like these are customers who have spent, I don't know, at least $600 over the last 6 months. But here we are looking into the customer lifetime. And it already gives you a hint how you measure these stuff. Obviously, a session will be measured pretty likely with any kind of analytics system. So because a session usually is not pretty long, so it's, let's say, 30 minutes or maybe even less. This is still something that you can cover with different kind of techniques. You can set a cookie, or you can also use a session identifier that is just valid for 30 minutes, and so that you can stitch everything together. This is how you measure a session. Technically, you can measure a user by analyzing the cookie that is set. But because when we look at this whole customer journey, this can be pretty long to do. Usually, like you would measure users by analyzing their accounts. This means, so hopefully maybe they authenticate along the way so that you have a user ID. when they order something, you usually know this because like they have usually either they have an account or they use the same kind of email. And obviously, if they don't use the same email, you cannot stitch them together. But let's assume they use the same email, so you can bring it together. And by this, you can create these kind of metrics, but you track it on a different level because the time period is a lot longer where you cannot really rely on cookies anymore. And so this makes it different. Maybe one thing, let's do a quick nerd thing about sessions. What I just described was a website session. The interesting thing is, first of all, I can have different website sessions. First of all, the conversion, for example, could be different because when we look at customer journeys from a big picture perspective, my customer journey is not always that I end up buying something. So for example, if I look into items that cost a little bit more or needs a little bit more research, I might have been on a discovery session. I'm not on a purchase session, but I'm on a discovery session. The interesting thing is if we have a way to identify if someone is on a purchase session or if someone is on a discovery session, then, for example, we can work with different kind of conversions for this. For example, for a discovery session, we could say when someone bookmarks a product, or when someone, I don't know, spends a significant amount of time on a product detail page and is really interacting with a lot of the information that we have there, then we can assume that maybe this is not a purchase session. So once someone does this, at least like bookmarking something, it definitely creates a signal that tells us, oh, that's not a purchase session. This person is just investigating and is not ready to buy yet. And so we might, for example, exclude this session from our calculation of our conversion rate. Here you see, it's a tricky thing because session in the end is a model. So we model sessions. So analytics tools model sessions for us. This is like why we don't really think about them so much because especially Google Analytics just put there the session metrics and said, hey, look, these are the sessions. You have that many sessions. You really have to go into the documentation to understand how they actually calculate the sessions. But the nice and interesting thing about sessions is it's just a model. So you can model whatever you want. For example, you could also have a checkout session. Interesting thing because it could be that people buy within one website session, they do 4 orders, for example. There are sometimes some shops where you have this behavior more often. Then, for example, it would be interesting to just analyze a checkout session. So every time when the cart gets empty again, a new session starts. You can model this. It's super hard if you use a analytics platform, then you have some ways to configure your sessions. So usually like it's the time window that you can define, but that's it. But if you, for example, do all your session modeling in the data warehouse, then the sky is the limit. So then you can really go into this interesting exercise. And I can really tell you, it's a very interesting exercise to identify types of sessions, because this can give you really interesting glance into, okay, let's say I'm a B2B software as a service, and we have different types of session when people come to our marketing websites. It could be like people just want to learn more, so they will stay around more with the content. Maybe they sign up for a demo or so. Then we have people who are, let's say, already a little bit further in their journey and they want to check out how expensive we are, so they spend more time with pricing. Maybe they do some calculation with pricing. And then we have people who are ready to create an account. It could be super interesting to define different kind of criteria to classify different kind of sessions on your website. I'm just giving the nerd talk here to make it visible for you that session is not a fixed metric in time. Obviously, if you come from Google Analytics, you will have a standard definition of sessions. If you switch to a different kind of tool, you want to have the session. If you're really interested in a session, really you can think about, okay, how do we actually want to define a session? Okay, coming back to the initial question that started the whole video purpose. Should you use sessions or users? You should use both. In the end, a session will tell you something about someone lands on your website, in your application, and you want to understand what makes this session successful. So if you're an e-commerce shop, you will look into how many people will purchase something. This is the simplest session definition possible. And then you measure this, and then you have a conversion rate if this single session was successful. What does this conversion rate tell you? Okay, did we do a good job that when someone lands on our website, we get them to purchase something? When we look on the user level, we basically move on to customer lifetime. We will analyze conversions more on a customer lifetime perspective. So we will look into, did people do their first purchase? Did we acquire them as new customers? Maybe now we basically moved them along the customer journey and they are coming back and they, let's say, they buy something again. We moved them into returning customers. And then if we can get them to buy stuff pretty regularly, we can move them into VIP customers. And so the perspective is different, but both are extremely important to measure. I also have to correct myself. My recommendation is when people ask me, should I do sessions or should I do users? It's usually, hey, start with users. It's much easier because the technical concept is not so complicated. Let's say a user is a user. It's an account in your system, or yeah, at least it should be in the end, not just a cookie value. A session, as I already told you, it's a model. So you have to define a model. And every time when you have to define a model, it's not really easy. But I think I have to adjust myself a little bit, where I say sessions are still valuable. And it's still valuable to really understand how a session works, because it gives you a feedback about one immediate instance that was just happening on your website if it was successful enough. And it's also like an opportunity for the data and analytics team to really come up with interesting things when they start to define session differently. And you say, okay, we have these different types of sessions. We classify people in these type of sessions and we calculate different kind of conversion rates based on that. This can really enrich the whole analytics insights. I hope this was not too confusing, and I hope it really helps a little bit to understand when you should work with sessions or not. As a final note, when you use sessions in any kind of analytics tool, check the documentation, how they define a session. Some documentation are more extensive than others. If it's not really clear how they define a session in this tool, because you pay money for it, which for some tools you don't, then you usually have a support team. So if the session definition is not clear for you, reach out to support and ask them, hey, can I please get a clear definition of the sessions? Because then at least like you really know what you're dealing with. Okay, when sessions are changing. So it makes it a lot easier for you to explain changes in the conversion rate, because sessions have a specific kind of behavior, how they're calculated. So I give you this as the final tip. And with that, I hope this was useful. If you have still questions about sessions and users, make sure to write me a comment here under the video. And if you like this, please like it, then other people will see it as well. And also make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you see more interesting videos about, I don't know, X versus Y. I have no idea yet what will come next, but you will see this in the future. Okay, see you in the next video.